Hey everybody, and welcome to another tier list video where today we're gonna take a look at the Recon tab. Before we get into it, just a very brief thing in case you haven't heard. On Thursday, is it the 4th of March? Should be the 4th. There will be a ranked leaderboard reset after. Well, the last time I thought it was actually gonna happen when I asked was late 2016, so after more than 4 years. Better late than never. I'm certainly excited for it. You can expect some actual gameplay then, because it's gonna make me actually play Wargame again. Oh yeah, and on that day, Wargame is gonna be free for a whole week on the Epic Game Store. Just so you are aware. I think that's all the housekeeping and whatnot that needs to be done. So yeah, let's get into it. Similarly to the infantry tab, there might be units that are only really strong because of the transports or something. It is very, very rare in the Recon tab, and off the top of my head I can only think of one right now where the transport can make a significant difference. But you know, just in case I forgot something or anything along those lines. Oh, now that I think about it, there's certainly more. Just in case, well yeah, for that scenario, you know, we have the same rules we had for the infantry tab, right? Booster and transports alone, blah blah blah. You get the gist. Yeah, and now this is actually it, so let's get into it. Cobra. A lot of people really like this. I also like this, but I think I like it less than most people do. I think one of the reasons is just that it's a tiny bit awkward at times to fit in the US. Not always, but I can't always fit it in. I'm not the biggest fan of the grenade launcher on the Cobra. I much rather have an autocannon, because that would massively help to deal with like vehicles that might try to sneak through forests or something. And you don't really need a grenade launcher, because for like burst damage against infantry you have the rocket pods. Nonetheless though, I think a very affordable rocket pod helicopter that has good optics is incredibly useful to have. And that's easy A tier. Well, next up, honestly, in my eyes, and this might be a bit controversial once more, in my eyes, most overpowered, most broken unit in the entire game. Why? Well, first of all, it is a typical helicopter thing of like 0.2 seconds aim time. You only need to have line of sight for a split second, only need to be in range for a split second, and you get your missile out, right? But not only that, your fucking missiles fire in a salvo of 2 and are fire and forget. This thing is just utterly broken. Despite it for some decks being fairly easy to deal with, I still think it's incredibly broken. It is, of course, you know, ridiculously strong, and I think a lot of people are gonna disagree with me on the accounts that it is so expensive and so easy to kill, but I still think it's the case. But yeah, let's not waste more talk on this. Mi-2. Now, recently I've really warmed up to just cheap Recon helicopters. Even if they don't have weaponry. I always really like the Gazelle cannon. I mean, with always, I mean, like, you know, ever since I made videos and anything like that. I just had to remember. I vividly remember, this has nothing to do with the Mi-2, but I vividly remember, and very early in Red Dragon, I was of the opinion that the Gazelle cannon is absolute dog shit. Well, guess what changed now. In any case, Mi-2, these cheap Recon helicopters, very good optics. I find them a lot more useful. I feel like, especially with like intermediate or lower tier, quote unquote lower tier, like newer players or less experienced players, I think they can massively help, because I feel like they very often have issues with not knowing what to expect, or just the opponent just being very unexpected because they didn't expect certain units to be there. And these units can help. Not always, you know, if the opponent starts with a Tiger or a Ninja and just snipes it, you know, then, well, it's gonna be useless. But at least you will know that there's a Tiger or a Ninja, or you will know it much earlier. And even if even you know, me, who against most players, not all players, but most players, you know, even if something unexpected happened, I usually am able to still get a win. But still, I very much value the option to have, you know, for such a cheap price, essentially in many matchups, the option to very early spot where the enemy is gonna push and with what, and if it's ranked, you know, with what deck. So those can be very, very useful. It's just that certain decks they can't just quite fit it in, you know, because there's so much other stuff, and you may only be able to get 4 recon slots, but they can be so useful, even if it's for the opener alone. That is honestly sometimes very much worth spending a slot on. So I think that's why all of these in like the 40-ish point range, they're just gonna get a simple B tier. This one is not though. Exceptional optics are only, in my eyes, only really useful in helicopters, at least given the ground units that they are on. There's like one, I think there's like a single ground unit with exceptional optics recon where I would say, yeah, it's not really a bad unit. Every other one that I can think of right now is basically, in my eyes, waste of points and slot. I said slot, not slut, by the way. The AHS Mi-8R is 75 points for exceptional optics. You pay 35 points for a speed increase that is not too small. However, you have to keep in mind that it is big, so it has a much lower acceleration. So on smaller maps, the Mi-2 might still be, you know, near the front line first. But the thing is, for spotting stuff in the open, it's not good optics is most of the time just enough. Yes, you spot stuff earlier. Yes, you spot stuff deeper into forests. But with these helicopters, you know, the unarmed ones that can't defend themselves at all, you expect them to just probably die at some point anyway, you know? Sometimes you might even want to suicide them. So the optics are only really useful if you use them offensively, so you can, you know, spot the tanks and the IFVs and whatnot at like 2,500 meter range while they're sitting in a forest or something, or even infantry at times. But if your helicopter is not armed, then you won't be using it very closely to the front line anyway. So it's just not worth it, because the biggest problem is that unless you're going fairly close and use the helicopter offensively, the exceptional optics aren't going to be that useful, because very often you're just going to have line of sight blockers. There's going to be buildings in the way, or forests that aren't even inhabited, or your own forests. So you can't, very often you can't even make use of these optics. Most of the time you use helicopters, you're going to try to spot stuff in the open, and that's where very good is just more than enough. And honestly, I think E is a bit too much. I don't think it's like actually that bad, but it is significantly worse. Significantly worse. Alouette, you know, same thing with the Mi-2. Even better, because it's 5 points cheaper while being more or less the same. It's a tad slower, but who cares? Jet Ranger, same with the Mi-8R, but at least it doesn't cost you half an armor, and like, you know. So, you know, just because it's 15 points cheaper, at least it's, you know. Alouette III. I legit never even realized that there's Alouette II and 3. The Alouette II I use every now and then in mech deck, for example, Baltic mech. The Alouette III, never. AML90. This brings up memories. For those who didn't know, I used to be quite a forum warrior on the Eugen forums. I used to debate random people and shitters, and that I'm on purpose, like, you know, inflammatory here. I don't mean it like that seriously, but people who just, you know, they're not as good, and, you know, nowadays I would just ignore them, and that's what I do most of the time nowadays. But back then because I had nothing else to do, I was sitting in class or something and was just browsing the forum because I'm a stupid nerd. I was just going to the forum and constantly argue with people because I felt like I'm so good at the game, I know better than anyone. I guess in that sense I'm still the same today. I'm just joking. But in any case, I remember back then, it was before the AMX 10 meta, right? That was in like early 2016, or I think this one was probably more like late 2015. The Hachinana was very meta. Hachinana spam, I think it was even 25 points back then. Bloom for motorized, Bloom for mechanized, all over the place. Hachinanas everywhere. And I was like also arguing like Hachinana is so good, it is too strong, you know, BRDM3 at least costs 35 points, but in general Recon autocannon vehicles, especially if they're wheeled, very useful. And I remember and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but I remember that one person was like saying, "Oh, just get an AML-90, they're gonna counter them easily," and I'm just thinking, are you actually out of your goddamn mind? Yes, sure, that thing outranges it, but it'll need 3 shots to kill Hachinana with 8 AP heat. You know, no matter what range, 3 shots. While the Hachinana will do full damage to it, given that it has only 1 front armor. It is just, oh my god, it's just, and the dude just didn't want to accept it. He's like, nah, Hachinana is not OP, just get an AML-90 and it'll kill. Oh, I just. But anyway, AML-90, nobody uses it, of course. How bad is it really? It is pretty bad, but it's not really that, like, it's not unusable. If we had nothing else, it would be, you know, not, it's like 20 points for a 3 HE slinger that has, you know, optics and stealth, so it won't instantly get killed. You're in a defensive position 2 or 3, or while assaulting, you know, not useless. Of course, nobody ever uses it because this fucking thing exists. Which I mentioned every now and then, but I was one of the late believers in this. There were certain, or I guess not late, not as much as a Tiger, but I was certainly not the first one to realize how OP this is, right? Because this got buffed in like 2016, like 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 different patches. And only really in early 2017 I realized how ridiculous the thing is. I very much remember that I was, back then, for shits and giggles, this, nowadays I'm like, it's not just a shits and giggles deck, but back then I was playing Yuriko Motorized because I was like, haha, funny deck, it's pretty bad, but whatever. It's not really that bad, but when I played it, I realized, Jesus Christ, AMX-10s, they're fucking good, dude. So in that time period, I probably somewhat helped popularize it a bit. But again, I was certainly not the first one to realize it. But yeah, it is. I don't think I ever advocated for a buff of this. I think back then I was still just on the looks train. MX-13, FL-12. It is A tier for sure, but it should maybe even S tier. It is ridiculously good. Still, I don't even use it that much. It is kinetic, which is very good. It has 10 AP, so it will double tap 2 armor, even at maximum range. Has decent enough armor. Range is fine. Could be better. Accuracy is okay. It is. I might make some enemies here, but I think it's quote unquote only A tier. It is very good, but I don't think it's quite S tier. Verkenning. I'm on the brink of putting this in B tier. I'm not sure. I am not sure. Nah, I think it's still very much A tier. It's really good for like dealing with IFVs and the like, because it's really it's the stealth that gives it the survivability. You know, 8 armor, 3. It dies to if you look at it in a mean way, right? This is okay. So, but you know, 10 RPM, decent gun, only 15 AP. So it's really not that much, but it's not really meant to actively kill tanks. Kill tanks. But these days, with medium tanks and heavy tanks being a lot more used, and like 84As around, I think this would be better if it had like, if it was cheaper with a worse gun. Believe it or not, if this was like a Leopard 1A4 with like 12 AP and 2100 meter range, but like, you know, 45 points or 50 points, it would probably be better. This one is also A tier. It is not as good as the Dutch one. No, it has worse AP, it's heat. But I think other than that, it's basically the same, right? Same range, same accuracy. But you know, just heat instead of kinetic. It's cheaper, of course. So if for just infantry fire support, it's gonna do, you know, essentially a better job, or the same job for cheaper, but This is 55 points. I'm not a huge fan of this. Like, you pay 15 points, like, yes, for speed, but you're 55 points, dude. Is this an S or if it's an S? I mean, you are very small and 6 HP, which is actually very good. Is this a Fennec? Is that a Fennec? I'm sorry, but I'm just. Is that I never looked at this closer. Is that a fucking Fennec? What was it? It was Norway, right? Oh, what was that? Oh, Anzac? Anzac. I'm sorry for like doing this in the middle of a video. Hold up, you can't even see. No, this is so scuffed. Movement, flying. You have this. Where are my Fennec boys? It's a fucking Fennec. I never knew that. Because I was like very small and 6 HP. That is pretty rare. And I was like the only thing that I know that has that, you know, these stats. It's a Fennec. And this kind of looks like a Fennec, and lo and behold, it is a Fennec. And so is this. But this is a sicker. It's even the same name. Yeah. No. 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 Exceptional ground region optics, bad. You know what the availability on this thing is? 4. You get 4 per card. 4 of these things. 55 points. For something that can't spot further than 2,000 meters because there's gonna be line of sight blockers anywhere. There's a bush here. There's a building here. Forest there. Mountain there. You can't even spot that far to make use of this. So you're gonna sit in the same bush where an infantry squad is gonna sit. But for 30 points more, you're significantly easier to spot. Can't kill shit, let alone defend yourself. This is just fuck exceptional ground recon optics with exception of 1 unit. I'm on a crusade against these utterly worthless pieces of things. Yeah. And a friend. Well, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Honestly, no, they're not very good either. Once again, this same thing as the exceptional optics things. I mean, yes, you're cheaper, but like you die to a fucking sneeze. Like at least this thing has like a KPVT, so if it gets behind enemy lines, it can actually like kill a CV or something. I still wouldn't use this one. Also, ABS always be spiking. In case anyone knows the reference. You know, this thing at least. This is easy C tier. Why? Because there's a fucking KPVT. And this thing is so fucking cheap. You just spam it around, and one will like manage to get behind enemy lines, and you know, oh, there's a Jeep CV because someone didn't buy base defense and uses fucking Jeep CVs. This one, you know, at least it's 10 points, and it's like fast, it's amphibious. At least there's that, right? This one is actually really good. These BRDM2s, they're so underrated. The advantage it has over the Jeep is that it is faster off-road and amphibious and has so much autonomy as well. Actually the same. But you know, I don't know, 1 armor and 10 HP, so you know, if you use this, if you use this and you find an infantry CV in a town, the infantry CV is gonna kill you. Because you have 5 HP and no armor, so you get killed by the MG. And Bedouins, I mean, they're just regular recon squads, but I mean, I feel like regular recon squads are a bit underrated. Yes, they're not particularly fast. Yes, they have, especially these ones, like horrible armament, but like they're recon infantry, so they have very good stealth, very good optics, you know. And even if a tank shoots at them, they're gonna survive the shots. So they're underrated, and they all have like cheap transport, so you don't have to, you know, pay a shit ton of them. So yeah, that's a bell. This is rough, right? I have the AH-350s in C and the Mi-2 in B. So where do you put this? legitimately in B tier because of the minigun. You're gonna, yes, there's so many scenarios where the minigun is absolutely useless, and it is a pretty bad minigun, but like, if you, there will be like once in a blue moon a scenario where you just fly it into the enemy, zone, and there's an infantry CV or a jeep CV, and you manage to kill it with the minigun. At least it has some weaponry. It's not good, but it is something. BGS. Some people really like the BGS and the, excuse me, and the Grenzer, the only 2 militia Recon squads. And I mean, they spot just as well as Fernspäher, Commandos Para, Erikoisrajajääkäri, etc. But there's one, and of course they're slower. But there's one big thing, they only have good stealth. Every other Recon squads, except for like 2-man sniper squads, of course, has very good. They are very good. Shock squads are very good. Elite squads are very good. The 10-man, not the 2-man one. Right? They all are very good, but these have good. And it is a big, big difference. They're much, much easier to spot, coupled with them being even slower than Bedouins. I don't think they're quite as good. I mean, if you have nothing else to do, like in, say, West Germany armored or something, they're gonna do the job, and they are dirt cheap, but like only good stealth, it's not very good, quite literally. BMP1 TJJ, BMP1 with the Congers, it has stealth and optics, can fire Grom and Congers at the same time. Not a big deal because it is a Grom, but if you're going up against IFVs, which this is honestly best at dealing with, it's not too shabby. It is good. It is pretty good, honestly. Legit, I think this is 8 here. But why is this not never seen? Yeah, well, because the T55 exists, and many people prefer it. And then in there's no need for this in Baltic or Finland, because you have the Spike that deals with IFVs or KTs. So there you have it. Let me briefly. There you go. Okay, BMP1 KT, honestly same story. There's one downside to this unit, fairly low armament, a fairly low amount of rounds for the Bushmaster 2, but it's honestly still very, very good. Like the Bushmaster 2 is like, not objectively speaking, but in my eyes, the best autocannon in the game. Like it's very good against the vehicles, very good against infantry, has good accuracy. This like the best middle ground between, let's say, the Marder 2 autocannon and the Marder 1 autocannon, right? Very low rate of fire, but good range, high AP, and very high rate of fire, but very low range, very low AP, very low accuracy. And the Bushmaster is just the perfect middle between those two. Like, Snezka. I mean, it's like half the. It is pretty good. It is pretty good. But it's kind of fallen out of favor a bit. But I think it's not that. I think. Let me think for a second about this. Okay, well, before I go for this, a quick story. Back in the day, 2015, another tangent, but who cares? 2015, Eastern Bloc was in a bad place. Poor Eastern Bloc. Back then, I was in a group of people who, it was publicly visible, but not everyone could write in it, only those invited. It was a Steam group. A bit of drama is always in the Wargame community. Nothing can go without drama. But we did balance suggestions with flags and blah blah blah. And another tangent of the tangent, someone suggested Jelly 2 to be 3-pick card. Everyone else said no, but Eugene said, hey, good idea, and they did it. Garbage idea, but one of the ideas that I very much, I will take credit for this. I'm so full of myself that for once I will actually take credit of for this. I suggested to change the Snezka from a useless 60 points exceptional optics recon unit to 30 points good optics recon unit. And it's still a good unit, but back then units like this were incredibly useful and so meta. And if you didn't have something like this, you better have something. You better be like God, like everywhere else, because like cheap recon vehicles with good autocannons were their shit back then, both offensively and defensively. And this was a godsend back then, and I loved it. Also, it was like to this. Well, I mean, until the DLC, like the only like cheap recon autocannon on that is tracked, right? Everything else like wheeled Hachinanas, looks, BRM3s, everything is wheeled or expensive with Tau 2s like the Bradley or something. Back to this. I mean, it's gonna be 8 here, but I feel like do I maybe like rank them a bit too high, because they're all never seen, yet they're 8 here. Even the Snezka is not even seen that often. So I think I'm gonna rank them all down one. Do I have this up again? I have this up again. I think I'm gonna rank them all down 1 tier. I think the Snezka is on the same tier, but yeah. No. BRM-1, we had this with the SPW-40A. BRM-2, we had this with the SPW-40P2. I guess this is capitalized, yeah. BRM-1, BRM-2. Oh, this little thing. Oh, you ugly little duck. Man, you're one ugly piece of shit, huh? Well, I'm too lazy to check, but I don't think it can fire both weapons at the same time. Not like it matters. I mean, it is wheeled, which is kind of nice, but like... The thing is, grenade launchers don't function well with units that fire at long range. Grenade launchers work well on stuff that is either cheap or highly armored and tends to fire at close range. Case in point, PTRT, BMPT, Merkava 2A, Merkava 3B. What's the opposite of case in point? Well, I mean, case in point for units that don't utilize it well. This little thing, 9-inch GKG, although the 9-inch GKG being a tank fires as medium range, so it will actually sometimes make use of it, but it's more like a nice bonus, not why you buy the tank. And a freaking ADGM vehicle that has 1 armor, it's not gonna make use of a fucking AH-17. Like, sure, you're gonna be like, well, but then infantry can't walk up and counter it. Well, if infantry walks up and then it's gonna get spotted and killed because it's getting one shot. But this, it's not useless. Sorry for this, but yeah, it's just a 9. You will not get into the club of the useful units. BTR 48, very similar to the BRM-2. While it isn't amphibious and it has quite worse autonomy and off-road speed, it has a CPTU. And the CPTU is essentially a KPVT, but much bebetter. It has a significantly higher rate of fire, has, I believe, more suppression as well, yes, and more range versus helicopters. CPTU is not KPVT, but good. At least the early KPVT. The 20% accuracy KPVT on like PT Radio and such, they're pretty good, but the early ones, yeah. PT-76, I mean, it is decent. It's heat, but 10 AP, so it will double tap 2 armor at least. You have pretty crappy off-road speed, not the best range, but you're 15 points as well. Sadly, no MG. Well, you have, but you don't. Honestly, like, given that it's 15 points and has a heat gun and 2 armor. Again, don't underestimate 2 armor. If you get like 2 or 3 of those, the 2 armor will make a massive difference if you go up against like a couple of IVs with autocannons. Assuming you get spotted. So do not underestimate that. And 10 AP, 8 RPM is not the worst. 2 H. It has only. Honestly, it has only. Honestly, no. Given that it has only 2 HE, that is a big no-no. Type 63 used to be meta AF, I believe it used to have increased range, and no, that was the M41. It used to be 20 points though. It used to be very, very good, very, very meta, very, very useful, very, very strong. I mean, it's pretty decent still. A C tier, for sure. It's just that with 2 armor and like a tank gun, you ideally want to be able to survive as well. The T-55s, you know, they're okay. They're okay. That's it. Like compared to this. So anyway, I never realized, you know, I mean the T-55s, I think they got a couple of buffs. I think they used to have worse accuracy, and none of them had their MG. So especially the MG being a 50 cal it's actually quite a nice buff that they finally got that. Or only the North Korean one get that? Never mind, only the North Korean ones got that. Well, I mean, and the Yugoslav one. The other ones still have no MG. Oh no. Oh no. But no, honestly, no, the Type 67 is honestly still. It's just that, you know, it's certainly not D tier, you know. It's not that. I would still probably go for the T, but honestly, like, it's 1/3 extra accuracy, right? You have to keep that in mind. You're much smaller. You're faster. You're amphibious, and recon units that certainly count for something. Not so much on some like. You know, there are units where like a 20k made difference between 15 and 70 is like a big deal, and that's where it's a small deal. On AA, who cares? You know, on CVs, whatever. IFVs, depends on what kind of IFV. Tank, also depends on what kind of tank. Expensive tanks, oh yes, it's a big deal. Cheap tanks, whatever. But recon units, certainly big deal, because sometimes you want to be sneaky, sometimes you want to be aggressive. You know, Beta-40A, we had this. This is. I mean, the 50 cal is very, very nice, but given that at close range you're not gonna be that good anyway, I think it's not gonna. It is a significant improvement, but not significant enough. T-55, it is still pretty bad, but I don't. It is a significant difference, but I don't think it is significant enough to mean that it's like a whole tier lower, or rather that the North Korean one is a whole tier higher. 9. How does the Star Wars thing go? Hold up. We do not grant you. Yes, you are in this tier list, but we do not grant you the rank of a useful unit. There we go. Something along those lines. You know, it's a very good optics elo, 45 points. It's a bow. I have no idea what VBH means. Let's Google that. I guess BH could mean Beobachtungshelikopter, which basically means reconnaissance helicopter. B0105. German Wikipedia, please. Let's see versions. Okay, let me. VBH. Verbindungs- und Beobachtungshubschrauber. I don't know what they mean with Verbindungs. It means connection. I don't know what kind of connection. If it's like means like it'll connect the troops with via reconnaissance or something. You know, keep them in. You know, keep them in the like letting them know what's going on or something. In any case, another bow, the same bow. Cavalry Scouts. I think they're seriously underrated. They're not particularly amazing, but I think they're seriously underrated. They're better than probably any other regular recon squad, though not quite A tier. Do not underestimate. The thing is with regular recon squads is, right, generally you probably have to, except with the exception of the Hussars 85, which nobody uses because you have Commandos Para, but with the exception of those, they all have garbage anti-tank weaponry, right? But the thing is with the Dragon, yes, it has only 13 AP and for an ATGM, pretty low range. But these things are sneaky as fuck. They're gonna be close to the front line. It happens all the time that, you know, they have a Recon squad sitting somewhere and a tank just drives past it, right? Because the enemy can't spot it. And ideally, if the tank drives past it and is then engaged in a fight, then you turn on the Dragon, and then the tank ideally can't turn around because it's engaged somewhere else, and then you get a nasty side or rear shot, or want to kill yourself because it missed the shot. But honestly, yeah, they're vastly underrated. Once again, but just, you know, Rangers exist, so why use them? Cayuse. Very Cayuseful. Scout Defender, you know, these very cheap, good uppings, they're so good. They're cheap, they're still more than good enough to like spot stuff that is pushing, because in the early game, everything's gonna be out in the open until, or like nearly everything's gonna be fast moving near the open, so very easy to spot in the opener. So the good uppings are just more than good enough. You're fast, and the fact that you have some weaponry means that you are still a threat to like CVs or like, you know, cheap units or anything like that. So your opponent can't just ignore it. Besides the fact that, you know, you'll spot their stuff. This is just not a bell. Commandos Para. Possibly the best shock recon in the game. They have a battle rifle, which is good on shock squads. I believe the best anti-tank weaponry on shock recon squads. I think there's one with 20 AP on the Sissy, but they have only 5 enemy range, and I'd always go for this one. It's a basic MG, but I don't think any of them must have like a mini-me or an RPK. I think they're all of just very basic MGs, all the shock recon squads. Although Rangers might be a bit better, because while they have one less AP, they have a carbine. Oh, you poor little thing. You poor little thing that I couldn't guess in Jeopardy. I mean, there's also an IV version, but this thing I didn't guess. I thought it was 2022, but it's 3022. This is so sad. This is like, at first glance, when I think, oh, this is like a Marder 1 autocannon clone. No, it's not. There's 15% accuracy, which is less than Marder 1, the same range, but also pretty bad rate of, like, average rate of fire. But like, average rate of fire, while you have horrible range, horrible accuracy, and horrible AP and suppression, so it's garbage. I mean, it has 4 front armor, and it is cheap, but like, that autocannon is I don't think it's like E tier, but like 9. If only you had your actual autocannon, then you might actually be somewhat useful. Although I'd probably still not use you, because then you'd be like 70 points or something. Erikoisrajajääkäri S tier. Erikoisrajajääkäri, is it correct? I think it is. Erikoisrajajääkäri. I mean, it's clear. They're fucking amazing. They massively bolster your 18 net. They're very good offensively. They're good for anything, early land grabs, sneaking around, you know, being in the front line, just spotting. And once again, you know, being so close to the front line, they massively help with your AA net. Also for the price, like, very good. It's like, even if they had just an Igla, you know, no Apple it'd be very good still. And it also makes it a lot easier to like fit stuff in the support up. You only need 2 AA units, you know. Could even get away with just a card of E290s if you wanted to, or a card of AKMs. You wouldn't, but you could if you wanted to. They're just so good. I used to run them in the KT, but honestly, I used the KT for 2 cards in the infantry tab. Because as good as they are in the KT, you only get 2 KTs. And you only get a 4 with the card of Erikois. Fallskärmsjägare. It used to be my favorite shock recon squads, because the Swedish 5-point truck is the only one that actually has good off-road speed. For the same price, you know, like significantly higher off-road speed. So it's essentially like a Humvee, and that is a massive difference between like a Jupiter and this thing, you know. This actually allows you to go for aggressive wheeled land grabs. And the fact that they're in mech means that Blue for Mechanized also has access to this to a certain extent. Fernspäher, I think 2-man sniper squads are underrated. Period. They're so hard to spot. I think that the main downside is none of them have like, if they had like they don't have to have a high end, but if they're like a mid end AT weapon, something like Carl Gustav. I mean, I know Carl Gustav doesn't make sense, like a huge recoilless rifle for a supposedly sneaky mobile sniper squad, you know, which is why they carry like these light laws, I assume. But gameplay wise, I mean, would make them so much better without like making them OP or anything like that. Still though, they're just very good. I mean, you're essentially just like the SPW40A or the BRDM-1. Cougar Recon, honestly, you know, not honestly, it's genuinely C tier. It's genuinely C tier. As a 7, the gun has a good range actually, especially for 20 points. But it has also 10 AP compared to the AML-90, right? The same price, of course, 1 armor. But it's honestly not that bad. I mean, it's not very good, but like, let me put it this way: with not that bad, I mean it's not useless, which one might think when first looking at that. Coyote. I used to think like, oh, this is really good. No, it's not. I mean, it's a Bushmaster, so pretty low rate of fire. It's at least a late Bushmaster, so you have 3 AP and like higher accuracy at least, but still just a Bushmaster. At least it's like an up armored LAV, or I guess it's a Bison or something. So it has 2 front and 2 side, but like it has very good optics. So I spent 45 points on something like this. That's a pretty mediocre autocannon, to put it mildly. I wouldn't recommend using this, but like, yeah, it's just that with recon vehicles, anything above good optics is usually not worth it. Exceptions being like the Bradley, because they fire at long range, so the very good optics, or like the better optics, are actually going to be useful. These things, they're going to be generally either for like sneaking around, or like for aggressive usage, or defensive usage, and in neither like defensive usage, meaning, you know, making sure nothing sneaks around. In none of these scenarios, the difference between good and very good optics is worth paying like, I think in this case it's 15 points for. You know, much rather have it cheaper, so you have more per card, and you can use them, you know, more aggressively, or like spam them out more. Yeah, you're better off getting 3 with good optics than 2 with very good optics. You know, you cover actually more ground that way. It's the same as the Mark 1, just with a different machine gun. Oh, this thing! I have a sweet. This thing looks so ugly. It's like an M113 with like a Scorpion turret. Is that what this is? Kind of looks like it. Probably is what it is. I have a sweet. This thing. Maybe you remember me playing ANZAC Armored in Ranked until like hit. Was it Brigadier General? Something like that. You know, from Private to Brigadier or something with ANZAC Armored. It was years ago. I only lost a single match against Putin on Nuclear Winter and his Soviet leg. In any case, this thing was actually surprisingly good. Similarly to the Cougar, you know, same gun, you know, 2100 meter range, which is good. Not the best accuracy or AP or the fire, but it's 20 points. But this time around, you have 3 armor and 2 side. So this thing is actually surprisingly strong. With strong, I mean like effective. And okay, no, sorry, I can't in all consciousness give this beat here, but it is better than once again better than you might think it is when looking at this at first glance. There we go. ASLAV-25, also a bit underrated. I honestly think it's B here. It's just that its role is essentially, hey, sneak me around and hope I get behind enemy lines to kill a CV. That's literally all it does. I mean, yes, you can use it in the, like, especially early opener or something, to just suicide at the front end or something. But it's not gonna seriously, like, you know, allow you to be aggressive in the motorized opener. You're gonna get shredded by KTs, and anything with an autocannon is just gonna get shredded. So you want this to be in places where it won't get fired at. Simple as that. So sneak it around, like highway on the flanks or something. That's where it uses. That's really all it does, and that's why nobody uses it, because even though it does roll pretty well, similarly to the BRDM-2, it's just ideally nowadays you very often have units that can do that and something else. Case in point, AMX-10. Formosa. It's an interesting thing, because for actual recon units, they're not very good. But what they do is just, they're town grinders, which is funny because in towns you don't really need optics at all. I mean, yes, if you sit at the edge of the town, you might be able to like spot over an open field or into forests next to it, but no, using them as scouts is pretty bad, because once they get spotted, they can't defend themselves, unless it's like getting spotted by an infantry squad. But usually your scouts are gonna get spotted by like 5-pointers or stuff like that, or if they get spotted by a ground recon, then there's usually a vehicle nearby as well, and they can't defend themselves at all against that. So that's why using them as recon is like a pretty bad idea. So I don't know how to rank them. This is so weird. Same with the Navy SEALs. Like, they are a good tech card, you know, for town fights. If you know you're gonna fight on a map where you need to go for town fights or something, that's where they're good at, and that's useful putting them in. But I'm gonna put them in B tier, make them green, and I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna explain this. But yeah. This is too bright. Nah, that's fine. Alright. I'll pause the recording, come up with something, and then yeah. Okay, I came up with something very simple. If your unit name is written in green, then it's not actually a good recon unit, but fills a specific role well. For example, E.H. For example, Formosa, Navy SEALs as good town fighters, but bad recon squads. Simple as that. Back to ranking. Scorpion. I mean, this is just the M103, but one less armor, one lower armor. I mean, I think it's faster as well, and maybe smaller, but it's the same gun. It also has less ammo. The M113 has 40, right? Yeah. Scimitar. Not actually the worst autocannon. I think that goes to whatever the Swedish thing has, as well as the Polish IFV, the crack that nobody uses because it's available to the single squad. It is a bad autocannon. I think the rate of fire is actually higher than the Bushmaster rate of fire, but you have no stabilizer and you have significantly lower accuracy. So it's still pretty horrible. The Fox is actually pretty alright, because it is so goddamn fast. Once again though, it does essentially the same thing as the ASLAV. Actually, no, I'm gonna give it a tier lower. Why? Because there's no stabilizer. If you wanna like sneak around and do shit like that, you want a stabilizer. This thing. I tried to make this work so many times, but it's just so freaking inconsistent. With inconsistent, I mean it doesn't hit anything. It hits 1 out of 6 missiles. It's not a particularly fast missile, it's not very accurate. I think it fires 2 in one salvo. God, this launcher looks so weird. Where does it even come from? Let me... Are there like, you know, flaps that open up or something? Let me Google it real quick. It's like the same thing, it's like the same missile as a Striker, right? Oh, I see. Okay, so the missile is just... Okay, I see how it is. I don't know how to describe it, but I know what it looks like, so you don't have to comment it. Yeah. I think it's C tier. Once again, it's certainly not useless. And it's like a ghetto Recon Bradley. But that's about it, really. It's like this is not a... How many ferrets are there? Freaking Commonwealth. Why do you have so many goddamn useless Recon units? No. Bugs Bunny meme. No. Gas. Actually, no, you're gonna be down there. Even more expensive than the UAC. Why what? You have a fucking roof, that's all? I guess you have 69 in the name, so that's good. This I'm on the fence. Why? Because this thing is fast as fuck and has the same stealth as recon squads, dude. That's very good. That's very good. I'm gonna give the C tier. This would actually be like B tier, maybe even A tier if it had like good autonomy. Like the autonomy is what holds us back. If this had like 500 kilometers, it would actually be good. And the only reason why you would still not see this, honestly, is because the Baltic motor is so much other strong shit. But like, oh man, I love this thing so much. Gazelle Cannon. Is this IF Cannon? These little no, I mean they're better than the Mi-8 for sure, because they're at least fast and very small, so they're actually not that easy to kill. And the snap, it's only 12 rockets. But like, yeah, this one's fine. This one, you also have these rockets. I'll let you stay in the C tier. Graniciari. Yeah, I mean they're regular squads. They're one of the worst. I think the best thing you get outside of Hussars 85 and Cavalry Scouts is the RPG-7. Because that thing has 700 meter range, so that's very good. But yeah, green jackets. I mean, they're also gonna be B tier. Actually, one of the worst squads because they have the fucking law. Or green checkered actually. They only have enough money for one, and the transports are like very big. Not even the links, right? It's really the saddest thing about this all. Grenzer, did I put him? Not Grenzer, BGS. Where did I put BGS? I actually put them in C tier. Yeah. Only good stealth after all. Jinana, very good. Very, very good. The AMX-10 before the AMX-10 was what it is today. God, I love that thing. It is very good. Oh, whoopsie. This is the Hera. I'm gonna let this say an AT. Okay, now here's the thing. If this is an A, but the AS-350s are in C, the thing is I gotta make the cutoff somewhere, okay? The cutoff for very good optics is 50 points to be in B tier. Done. Unless there's something very special about it. You might always say, well, it's only the AS-350 is only 5 points more, and it has 2 HP more, and blah blah blah. Well, there's gotta be a cutoff somewhere, right? Like you can't, otherwise you could endlessly say, well, but this is only 5 points more than this, and that is only 5 points more than this. I know that I may be just arguing with nobody because everyone was like, yeah, makes sense, and not even trying to be a comment warrior and saying, but Rasman, maybe I'm just making this person up, but I'm gonna argue with you before you can even write the comment. There you go. But this is the cooler Hera, the OP Hera. Like, this is actually just ridiculous how good this thing is. This is just what you have to keep in mind is this is a double Browning. That Browning is actually stronger in HE than the Gazelle Cannon's autocannon. As a high rate of fire, it has this range, but it's like actually more useful. And the rocket pods, it's just, this thing is just straight up ridiculous, and I love it. HKP, it is sub 50 points, so it'll stay in the cool club. Hussars 85 actually gonna be A tier. Because for no additional cost, not even lower availability, you actually get the LRAC F1. And even a better primary as well. Actually A tier. Believe it or not. Once again, just never seen, because you have Commandos Para. It's like very low A tier, but genuinely A tier, honestly. And you might call me crazy for that. but that's how I roll, baby. That's how I roll. Saren. Okay, this one is interesting. This is very tough to rate. This has actually 29 RPM, right? I think it has like a weird. Let me actually open the armory tool after all. I think it has a weird burst. Maybe it does have 29 RPM. I think that's like weird. I'll just wait for the armory tool to be open. But of course, there's no HE, but has very good accuracy, acceptable range, and 11 AP. Let's see, HVMS. It does fire in a burst. Salvo length of 6, shot reload of 2, salvo reload of 2.2. It nearly has constant 30 RPM. But just, you know, if it's panicked, then the burst will fire full RPM, and then it has a longer reload time in between. But for all intents and purposes, it is more or less 30 RPM, like straight up every 2 seconds a shot, which is bam, bam, bam. Okay, I think that's actually higher than you get the gist. I don't need to do this. But why is it so hard to rate? Because this is in Israel only. And Israel, as strong as it is, has certain weaknesses in a sense that there are certain types of units that it doesn't like dealing with. It doesn't like dealing with, like, it doesn't have like IFVs, right? So very often it has trouble dealing with like 5-pointer spam and stuff like that, outside of like forest where you have a white 90 spam. Because you usually have like Merkamas and like migrants, so to deal with like medium IFVs, quote unquote spam, you know, that isn't as nearly as numerous as 5-pointers, that's fine, you know, because then you have the spikes. But if you have dozens and dozens of 5-pointers, you don't have like autocannons or something to deal with that. Usually what helps is the T55 Blazer or the HVMS. But like the thing is, nobody uses the HVMS. Why? Because it has no HE rounds. So even if you put it at flanks, you'll still have to have like something there that could also shoot at infantry. So otherwise, there will just be a specialty squad or something walking up and killing it. And you can literally do nothing, not even drive over it. So yeah, and at front lines, you know, aggressive, you know, to deal with those 5-pointers, it's not amazing either, because you have only 2 front and side armor for 30 points. It's not too amazing. Given that, once again, the only thing you shoot at is vehicles. If there's, you know, and you can't even damage medium tanks unless you're pretty close. You know, so it's not like you could like retreat and shoot at like infantry or something while, you know, your tank is dealing with their tanks. So that's why this is like, I wonder if there's like decks that would make much better use of this. But for now, I'm just gonna dump it in the C tier because I'm not sure. Might be better, might be like really weird. Maybe it's like even D tier. I wouldn't put it E tier, but I've tried this a couple of times, but I just can't. I just don't know. I just don't know. Hey, there's gonna be 2 Iltises in there. Iltis Aufk and Iltis Scout, which is literally the same. This should be capitalized. I mean, yes, it is here, but it really shouldn't. Fun fact, for a very, very long time, they used to have 85% accuracy on their sniper because Eugen is sexist. No, I don't think it's because they're sexist, but it's just a poor North Korean unit that, you know, didn't get fixed for a long, long time. Actually, yeah, no, they're actually better than the green jackets because at least they get a Kuroko WAPC if you want it. But you know, it's very good optics with very good stealth. What more can you want? Jägare, very good, very good. SMG, MG3, Cayuse FM2, very strong combination. Not as good as Jägare 90 because the suppressed SMG, whatever, mini-me over MG3, it's better, but the big thing here is actually the one extra 175 meter range. That is such a big deal. Like a 2 AP, it's nice, you know. The upgrades on like the MG, the primary, you know, and the 2 AP is nice. But even if it was 5 points for just the extra range, it would be so worth it. It's so important, so useful. Okay, can you just hold up? Let me go to the UAC again. Oh no, this is also 25. I thought this was 20 points the whole time. Well, if you already wrote a comment when I said earlier that it's 5 points more expensive than the UAC while doing nothing specific, then you can delete it now. And we're gonna end this with the Fiat 6616. I think I also got this one wrong in the Jeopardy. Once again, it cannot fire grenade launcher and autocannon at the same time. They would work. This is so. In this case, it would actually work well. Close range autocannon and grenade launcher, good combination. But unlike the BTR-90, it cannot fire them at the same time. Besides the fact that the autocannon has lower range and like low accuracy and high rate of fire, so it doesn't work as at like long ranges like the BTR-90 does. So you have to get closer anyway. Still, it cannot fire them at the same time. So either you're just gonna shoot with the autocannon, or it's just that nobody's gonna bother with this shit. Nobody's gonna bother like microing the autocannon and turning it off when the grenade launcher is in range and you're fighting against infantry. Plus, you have 2 armor, 45 points. You're gonna die so easily, and you fight at close range. It's such a bad combination, dude. It is such a bad combination. And with this horrible D-tier unit, we're gonna end. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I'll hopefully see you next time. See ya.